Sends Juan there with that report. And for more on this and the rules and the impact, Anthony Chan joins me now from New York City. He's a former chief economist at JPMorgan Chase. Good to see you, Anthony. This is something that's been brewing now for some time. We have talked about this exact issue for many, many times. Why the timing? Why the announcement? Why this right now?
Well, Phil, what we see here is a sign of heightened political tensions between China and the United States. These are the kind of things that happen. It's sort of unfortunate that it's happening right now, but when you have these heightened tensions, these kinds of activities should not be very surprising.
This criticism is the U.S. is saying that they don't want China to import these chips to use for, I guess, things that the United States doesn't want them to use, for example, military. But looking at the statistics, China imports, the mainland imports nearly $300 billion worth of chips for the economy, right? And some of it gets re-exported out. How can they determine which are used for the right things and which are used for things that Washington doesn't like?
Well, right now, what Washington has decided to do is that since they can't control how China will use those chips, it's sort of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater and just trying to restrict those operations. But one thing that both you and I know, and that is that when you restrict this sort of activity, you move towards reduced globalization. And reduced globalization means reduced global economic growth. And that, of course, in turn means that it's harmful both to China and the United States. Not to mention the fact that many of these semiconductor chips in the United States rely on these revenues to support their research and development. And so the fact that now they're going to have reduced sales, NVIDIA was certainly a company that highlighted this situation. Now they will have less funds to support and fund their R&D, and therefore will be able to make less progress. So it is an unfortunate development for all countries around the world, including China and the United States.
The Chinese in Beijing are saying that this will ultimately make the global chip shortage, quote, worse, and ultimately hurt American companies. And to your point, I think the answer is yes, it will hurt some companies, but how much will it hurt, and what's ultimately the impact going to be on our day-to-day lives?
I think in our day-to-day lives, if U.S. companies, semiconductor companies in particular, have less money to do research and development, then that means ultimately somewhat less progress. If it means that Chinese economic growth is reduced by this, then it means that global economic growth is reduced by this. And ultimately, countries around the world will suffer somewhat of a reduction in their standard of living. So under no circumstances can we say that this is a positive development. And maybe it's an opportunity, Phil, for China and the United States to dial down those tensions and sort of sit down and talk about what are the things that make both countries uncomfortable with each other, and maybe make some progress so that we can move beyond this unfortunate situation.
Yeah, there needs to be a lot more dialogue. Anthony Chan, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a good weekend.